It gives me great pleasure to be here tonight. And what I'd like to do is probably take this occasion to reflect on at least the past 7 years in the tourism industry in Fiji. I remember that particular night when I was asked to come to this function 2 days after being appointed acting Minister for Tourism. One of the key tourism industry persons said to me, he said, you really don't want this job for too long, do you? And I said, well, we'll see what happens. We are here now and it's been 6 years, but there has been some substantial changes that have taken place within the tourism industry. Personally, one of the issues that I found that I thought was very interesting, there seemed to be this culture within the Ministry of Tourism that the responsibility of the Minister for Tourism fundamentally meant that he had to go and visit every single resort and perhaps take his family with him, of course at the behest of the resort itself. I did not do that, nor do I believe that any minister should do that. The wonderful thing about the tourism industry, as I very quickly found out, was that it had a very robust and very active group of stakeholders within that industry. But what it fundamentally lacked was a nexus, a connectivity with the rest of the economy in the manner it was being portrayed. I remember sitting again here on this stage with some of the ministers who are no longer with us and having a question and answer session about where the government was going with the tourism industry. And I felt there was a great sense of disconnectivity. It was as if the tourism industry operated in a vacuum. And indeed, many people, many of the bureaucrats, many of the ministers dealt with the tourism industry in that fashion. So we'd either grace the resorts and get a freebie, and you'd all feel good that the ministers visited your resort, but there's no substantial changes. I was looking at the figures provided by the PS in respect of the downturns in the tourism industry. And what is really interesting, those of you who may not know, at independence, we had 110,000 visitors that came to Fiji who were classified as tourists. Just before the '87 coup, we had 257,000 visitors who visited Fiji. After the two coups in '87, there was a drop by 26.4%. Before 2000, in 1999, we had 400,000 arrivals in Fiji, and following the Spade coup, we had a drop of 28.3% in arrivals in the following year. In 2005, we had a visitor arrival of 500, well, it's probably not a good idea to compare 2006 because the event took place on 5 December. But if you compare 2006, there was a drop of 0.9%, and the following year a drop of 1%. So it did not seem that bad, but many of the industry stakeholders would tell you that the yields probably weren't good. And this is one of the key features that we embarked upon, and that was to provide a long-term trajectory, a long-term infrastructural change, and I don't just mean physical, I mean legal, and I mean in terms of policy, that we needed to put into place to ensure the longevity of the tourism industry in Fiji, and to provide that connectivity with the rest of society. Today I'm standing here before you wearing a shirt that says Fijian crafted. This is very, very important. We have, as you know, launched the Buy Fijian, Fijian Made campaign. It's now been on foot for about 2 years. And this again is a very real way to ensure that the tourism dollar, or a lot more of it, stays within the Fijian economy. It is a very real way to ensure that the women who are making handicraft up Singatoka Valley or wherever they are doing it actually reap the benefits from the tourism industry. They do not go to one of the leading stores in town here and buy a shell necklace that's probably put together in Philippines. That is the kind of connectivity we need to ensure that the tourism industry in Fiji maintains a relevance to everyday Fijians. The yields, of course, have gone up. The latest figures show that the tourism industry in 2012 contributed 35.8% towards our GDP. That is $2.5 billion. These are the figures by the World Travel and Tourism Council. In 2013, it contributed 37.8%, or $2.6 billion towards our economy. Our economy is set to grow at 3.6%, as has been projected by the RBF. Today, we have a scenario where we have created brand Fiji, and we want the tourism industry to piggyback on that. We now no longer have the Fiji Visitors Bureau, which sounds very, very bureaucratic. It's now Tourism Fiji. We no longer have the Fiji Trade and Investment Bureau, we have Investment Fiji. We no longer have the Fiji Audiovisual Commission, we have Film Fiji. We of course now have Fiji Airways, an airline that has been saved from the brink of probably spiraling into oblivion, which is now making money. It owns 3 state-of-the-craft, or modern-day aircraft I should say, A330s, and which is set to grow. It's a very, very good scenario to be in. And it is somewhere where we all need to not just position ourselves within the whole sector, but as individually see how we can contribute towards the tourism industry. The tourism sector is private owned, and we think it's a wonderful thing, but we also want you to grow. What we need to do as government, or any government post-September 2014, is to be the facilitator, is to provide the environment for you to be able to get more tourists into Fiji, for you to make your profits, and for the tourism industry to have a very deep and socio-economic impact on the citizens of Fiji. That, ladies and gentlemen, I think should be the key driver of all of us, whether in the private sector, whether in the tourism industry, from the Ministry of Tourism's perspective, or all of the other ancillary services that government provides and other industries that provide towards the tourism industry. I'd like to, given the fact that, there's going to be changes post-September 2014, I'd like to publicly acknowledge a number of people and institutions, I should also say, that have contributed towards mainstreaming tourism in Fiji. I think the work that has been carried out by many of the pioneers that has been acknowledged both tonight and previously on other occasions must be acknowledged. The winds have changed, have taken over, not just in Fiji, but also globally. The way we view tourism, the manner in which you approach marketing, the manner in which you approach sales is completely different to what used to happen about a decade ago. I'll give you an example. Tourism Fiji now has New Zealanders and Australians representing Fiji, or Fiji Visitors Bureau, in those countries. Previously there was a mindset that we needed to actually send over Fijians to do that work for us, because there was a view that we need Fijians to basically market and sell Fiji through Fiji Visitors Bureau. You actually don't. The visitors will actually get to see the Fijians once we get them to Fiji. We have a limited pool of money. It costs a lot more to send a Fijian to work in Australia and Fiji and the Australia and New Zealand offices for Tourism Fiji than it is for you to hire a local. So we need to stretch that dollar. And that is precisely what has happened. That is precisely what the Tourism Fiji board has done. That's what the CEO is doing. It is critical Of course, we have unprecedented funding for the past 4 or 5 years of $23.5 million. But that's besides the point. There are many other countries who have much larger budgets. So we have to work a lot more smarter and in a clever fashion. We need people who are able to sell our own products, but they don't necessarily have to be in Fiji. And if you look at the business model of many of the tourism commissions or equivalent of Tourism Fiji throughout the world, that's precisely what they've done. Enormous amounts of money has been invested in our website, and we like all of you to join that website to be able to market and position Fiji in a lot better fashion. So I'd like to, and please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for the Tourism Fiji board and all the other staff and management who've come along with this change that we brought about. My permanent secretary is looking at me thinking she's missed out, but Minister of Tourism was next. They have also had a sweeping change in the Ministry of Tourism. We have now geared ourselves up and are hiring a lot more younger people, people who are a lot more attuned to the winds of change, so to speak. But we're also putting and investing in the younger people in Fiji to ensure that after I have gone, the permanent secretary have gone, and many other, the elder ones have gone, that the younger ones will carry on the baton. And I think that is very, very important. Fiji Airways, of course, has played a very, very critical role too in respect of some of the changes that have been brought about. Stefan is now bringing another wind of change, so to speak, in respect of the cultural change that is required within Fiji Airways, but also to build a local capacity that is critical to ensure that Fiji positions itself. There are some people who are in this room, who are not in this room, but who have also immensely contributed, and these are some of the changes that have been brought about. For example, we've got rid of the Department of National Roads. We've now created the Fiji Road Authority. And this is the type of connectivity that I'm talking about. We need to have connectivity between public amenities and the growth that is targeted both in the tourism sector and various other industries. The models of governance, the models of accountability is just as critical to the tourism industry as it is to the other industries. The corporate sector, AON Insurance, ANZ, and various other sponsors that have greatly contributed towards the development of the tourism industry, they must also be acknowledged. And last but not least, I think it is also very critical to acknowledge the very frontliners. I know you have a specific award for frontliner, but when I mean frontliners, I mean all the staff in the tourism industry. The demographics of the arrivals in Fiji will tremendously change. India expects to have 30.6 million Indians leaving India by 2016. The Chinese are already leaving China in droves to visit other parts of the world. Fiji, which has currently about 66% of its arrivals from Australia and New Zealand, will definitely need to change that composition as far as the percentages are concerned. Of course, we don't want to reduce the numbers from those countries, but the percentages definitely will change. And we need to be geared up for that. So the staff, we need to invest in them, and the staff who are already adapting to that, they must also be acknowledged. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are just on the cusp of a great monumental change and indeed a trajectory into the tourism industry. Not just the tourism industry per se, but other sectors, but specifically in the tourism industry. Because the fundamentals have been put in place. And if we are all able to pool our resources together, and I mean also intellectual capital, and your throughput in that, then tourism industry in Fiji will be able to surpass the bounds that we have all created in our minds. I'd like to once again, I know you're going to get the next surf coming on very soon and don't listen to a long speech, but I'd like to thank all of you for your contribution, whether you're a big resort, whether you're a small resort, whether you're providing ancillary service. Because in fact, over the past 7 years, when you think about it, and if you look at the figures that I've just highlighted to you, we could have also gone down in the doldrums. but all of us were able to put our heads together, join forces together to salvage the tourism industry, and not just that, but in fact be on a very, very good path for doing very, very well and projecting ourselves into the future. I think we should all put our hands together for our own selves. Thank you very much for the trustees for this continuation of the work. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Gerald Barrett. I think sometimes when you acknowledge other people, you get left out too. Thank you for your contribution, and all of the other pioneers who are here, all the sponsors, all the various properties, the managers who've continued their faith in the tourism industry. And I wish all of the people who have been nominated for the awards tonight, just because you do not win a prize specifically, does not mean you're a loser. Thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a very good evening.